I thought Purdy was really sharp. I love what they do with motion. I love the way it creates things. He was outstanding. I just thought it was a really, really efficient game. And the thing you saw with Purdy, and, again, when Mac Jones played and everybody was like Mac Jones versus Purdy, blah, 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 because Mac played well, no question. But you saw the movement that Purdy brings to the table.
Here's what I'd love to know from the perspective of the 49ers defense. Does Phillip Rivers having an inability to really bring a downfield game, does that allow the 49ers to load the box? In other words, does Phillip Rivers' presence help the 49ers with Jonathan Taylor?
It should. Now, here's something that's fascinating. Mike McDonald, who, as you guys know, is one of the bright young coaches in the league, as a head coach, but also an outstanding defensive coach, the pass game approach he took versus Rivers and the Colts was to just rush with his four-man D-line, which, by the way, is very good, particularly on the inside with Williams and Murphy, and play with 7 in coverage, but he played a much higher percentage of man coverage than has been the Seahawks' MO all season. So what he decided to do, because he's not been a high percentage man-to-man defensive coach this year, McDonald I'm speaking about, is he decided in this game against those receivers and Rivers to play a lot more man coverage. Now, I don't know what Robert Saleh will do, whether he believes that his corners and safeties as well, because they do factor in, can they do that? But I think for sure you can get people into the box. Obviously, you study that run game in detail. You see the kinds of runs they like. They're pretty diverse as a run team with Taylor. But the great thing about what McDonald did is the longest Taylor run in that game was 11 yards. There were no explosive runs. That's what you have to prevent. You have to prevent the explosive runs.
And that's something the Niners didn't do against Tennessee, and I wonder what you saw on the tape where, Pollard had some explosives. Are the Niners just getting pushed off the ball, especially, in that interior?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because there was one run in particular that posed some problems in the game for them, and that's a run that we call duo, where there's 2 double teams on the defensive tackles, and then you push back and you go to the second level. And they had some issues with that. Their tackles did get pushed back a bit, and, Pollard obviously had a couple of runs that were longer, but I'm talking about even the 6, 7, 8 yard runs, because those are the runs that really matter. Those are the runs. If that's what happens with Jonathan Taylor, even if he's not breaking a 30-yarder, and Rivers can be somewhat consistently in the 2nd and 4s and the 3rd and 3s, then the fact that he doesn't have the big arm becomes less of an issue because he doesn't have to drive the ball down the field in those situations.
Is he probably, did you see him? He's a smart guy, and he's never been good. He's never been a mobile guy to begin with. I wonder about the Niners pass rush. They're on pace to obliterate, and this is a bad thing, the record for the least sacks in a season by a 49er team. But they're going up against somebody who wasn't mobile when he was 25, and now he's 44. Yeah. How do you see that matchup this week?
Yeah, well, that's going to be interesting as to how Robert Saleh chooses to play it, guys. Does he choose to just rush 4 and play coverage? Does he choose to increase his pressure frequency? They played with a backup right tackle last week, a rookie, Jalen Travis from Iowa State, who I personally liked a lot coming out, but he played right tackle for the Colts. Their starting left tackle, Raymond, got hurt in the first half, I believe, and they ended up playing with a backup left tackle. So I didn't look at the, it's only Wednesday and it's a Monday night game, so you're not going to necessarily get a lot of the injury reports yet. So I don't know the status of that, but they could be playing with 2 backup offensive tackles, the Colts that is, and then you have to decide, can we win one-on-one? Can Huff win one-on-one? How are we going to attack? That to me is a big question for Robert Saleh, who obviously knows more about defense and his players than I do.
And on the other side of the ball, DeForest Buckner is a maybe at best, and they're already down both of their corners with Sauce being out and Mooney Ward not playing as well. And coming off of Brock Purdy's game, just going back a little bit, Greg, what did you see from Brock? Because Mark and I were both thinking that might have been his best game of the year.
Yeah, and I was just so really disappointed, and I guess we're not going to know the answer to this about Ricky Pearsall getting hurt on his last catch of the game, which ended up being the catch that I don't want to say it sealed the game, but it was obviously a big catch. So I guess we're not going to know that, so we won't really discuss that, other than the fact that I thought Pearsall looked great. And it's funny, when I was watching the tape before I really knew what his injury was, I was thinking of you guys, because every week you ask me, what about Ricky Pearsall?
Yeah.
And he kind of looked okay, didn't you think?
He looked great.
Yeah, he looked fantastic.
He's fantastic. I think everybody's got the same question, which is just, and I never know if this is bad luck or if a player should be held accountable for this in some sort of a way, but he's got to find a way to stay healthy, I guess. That's everyone's question.
You just never know. So we're not going to know the answer to that. Obviously a lot of people say, well, they should sit him down and, get healthy for the playoffs. By the way, there's no guarantee of anything right now with 3 games to go. So, and coaches and players don't think that way. If he gets cleared, he's going to play.
Yep.
And we're not going to know that. So let's not discuss it. But getting back to Purdy, I thought Purdy was really sharp. I love what they do with motion. I love the way it creates things. He was outstanding on third down. He was 9 for 10 for 95 yards and touchdowns. 7 of the 9 completions resulted in first downs. How good they were overall on first down. On third down, they controlled the ball for more than 37 minutes because of that. I just thought it was a really, really efficient game. And the thing you saw with Purdy, and, again, when Mac Jones played and everybody was like, Mac Jones versus Purdy, blah, 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 because Mac played well, no question. But you saw the movement that Purdy brings to the table. He's just a better athlete. He can make plays with his legs. Look, Purdy's been back for 4 games. They won all 4. Obviously, he had the one game where he threw the 3 picks on Monday night. We talked about that then. But for the most part, I think he's been pretty sharp.
I'm glad the name Mac Jones came up. I have an off-the-beaten-path kind of a question. There's a report out there that there are some teams that might kind of be good fits or knock on the door of Mac Jones in the offseason. And in light of Daniel Jones' injury, the Colts may still want Daniel long-term, but they're going to need to figure something out short-term. So I wondered if you think that Mac Jones' skill set would be a good fit with the Colts next year.
Well, it's funny because of what's happened in the NFL this week. The guy I think would be the best fit would be Mike McDaniel in Miami.
Interesting.
Because it's a very similar offense, obviously. Now, McDaniel obviously was with Kyle for years and years and years. So he certainly knows the Kyle Shanahan offense extremely well. We know he's a run game savant, but even in the pass game, I'm sure the concepts are very, very similar in the way they're taught. And who knows what they're going to do with Tua? They can't cut him. I read today that if they cut him, it's a $99 million cap hit. So, he's going to end up being, I'm sure a backup, I would think. We'll see what they do. When someone like Mac Jones, who is not going to be getting $50 million a year to sign a contract. I mean, so, he could be available in that regard. But, Shane Steichen's a very interesting guy. Without going into detail, he really understood how to get the best out of Jalen Hurts. I think he knows how to get the best out of quarterbacks that have different skill sets. In other words, he's not one of those coaches that here's the way I do it and you've got to fit it. I think he's one of those guys that looks at the traits and skill sets and attributes of the quarterback and says, here's what he is, here's what he isn't, and I'm going to make sure that I play to his strengths and minimize his limitations. I think Shane Steichen's really good at that.
Anthony Richardson has an outside chance of being cleared. If he is, Greg, what do you see from him on tape that is positive? And, I mean, certainly based on that noise, I don't know if you sneezed, gesundheit, but positives and negatives of Richardson.
This is not an Anthony Richardson knock in any way, shape, or form. But, as I've done this, and just because of my background, I'm a quarterback guy. I love studying quarterbacks. I love talking to coaches about quarterbacks. Coaches ask me my opinion about quarterbacks because they know the kind of work I put in. And the thing that is tiring to me now, and I fell into this when I started years ago because it's easy to, and then I just kept learning more. I get tired of hearing that a quarterback has great traits because he can throw it hard and run fast. because I don't think that any coach who's really a good offensive coach and quarterback coach would say those two things anywhere near the top of the list in evaluating and discussing quarterbacks. Those are, and that's what Richardson is at this moment in time. Now, again, he's a young kid. I don't know Anthony Richardson. I don't know his work ethic. I don't know anything about him. But he's very young, and he was drafted high because people saw the fact that he's 6'5", 250, or maybe even more, but he's an unbelievable athlete the way we think of athletes, and he can throw it hard and throw it far, and he can run fast. But as far as the nuanced, subtle, detailed traits of playing the position, he would have a very long way to go.